Hi, Costa.
Hey, Michael.
Hey, good morning. Morning. Chris was telling me about a NASCAR event, I think in California, that you may be participating in or sponsoring.
Yeah, on the 25th. Um, Actually, Michael, I probably will have some availability if that's something you might be interested in going to since you're on the West Coast.
Okay.
I just kind of figure out I get a certain amount of passes and
Huh. Okay. Where is it being held?
Fontana.
Fontana. Is that down near LA?
It's near Riverside, so it's like 45 minutes from LAX.
Okay. Yeah. My I know Riverside well. My wife's family live there. Um, okay, good. Costa, let me just call Christina. I want to make sure she's getting on the call. Really nice lady from Phoenix. She and her husband are interested in the brand. Give me one sec. Make sure she gets on here. See, unless she is coming on if you see her, Christina Barrett. Here we go. Okay. Give me one sec. Okay. Um, Costa, hi.
Hey,
Yeah, sorry about that, man. I
oh, I think she's joining.
oh good. Okay, great. Awesome. Hi, Christina.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Oh, hi. Hi, good morning. I just called your number. You probably thought it was a crank call. It's got a 213 area code. Um,
Okay.
Morning. You've actually got Costa to yourself this
Oh,
morning. It doesn't happen often, but he's on the call here, and thanks for joining us from you're in Phoenix today, I'm imagining.
yes.
Good. Good. All right.
Please.
You're still good to do the call?
Yeah, I'm actually in the office today, so I had to walk away from my
Oh,
desk.
okay. All right. Well, good. Well, Costa's up in Pennsylvania. I'm imagining he travels a lot, but anyway, Costa, thank you for doing the call this morning. Christine will probably run, depending on how many questions you have, maybe 30 minutes max. So
Yeah, I'll do
Yeah,
I'll
okay.
do an abbreviated version of the backstory and we'll go straight to Q&A. And if you wanted a kind of deeper dive on the history of the business, we do put the videos on YouTube. So there's plenty of longer versions of the start to finish. But long story short, I got into this business after being in finance for quite some time, lastly with T. Rowe Price. And I was just looking for a business because I kind of had that entrepreneurial itch and I wanted to have a business of my own to build. And I was looking at businesses that I felt could be run while I kept my career at T. Rowe Price. T. Rowe Price was a really nice company and I enjoyed my time there quite a bit. And I never expected to be doing what I'm doing right now. And so I looked at businesses that I thought were manager centric, but not skilled manager centric, meaning I didn't want to be held hostage by an employee, especially if they knew that I wasn't going to step in and run the business. And so I looked at a bunch of different models. I took over a quick lube in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania in 2014 and kind of had my own views on how I thought the industry should go. I thought that there was some opportunity because the industry was very reluctant to accept technology. It was very reluctant to kind of listen to the consumer because there was one player on top that had so much market space that they didn't really need to do anything different. They kind of took for granted their customer base, and that environment kind of created what we're going through right now, where there's actually multiple competitors trying to overthrow that company at the top. And there's been a lot of opportunity and we've been really successful in selling our brand, which is really guided by our North Star, which is the oil change only model. And so when we set out to create this model and we wanted everything to revolve around the oil change only model, everything kind of had to fall down from that point. And so it started with figuring out how to create a building that was viable to do oil change only, figuring out how to create a staffing model that was viable to do oil change only, because the current trend right now with these much larger, more expensive buildings is all these other higher liability, higher skilled services that the consumer doesn't want. And if we truly believe that the consumer wants an oil change only experience, then we need to make it so that that's a viable product. And so we perfected that. We went from 1 store to 10 stores by COVID. COVID gave me the opportunity to take over quite a bit of commercial real estate when everyone else was kind of timid on the sidelines. We really pulled down, and now we're up to 18 locations corporately. We have 9 franchise locations open, and we've sold 150 territories over the last 14 to 16 months. And I think we have a real shot if we execute on building the brand at being synonymous with fast oil change only. And that's really our goal at the end of the day, is to kind of break through as that option where you're not going to have to be prepared for battle going in to just get a simple oil change. And that's really the high level version of the story. But since it's just the 2 of us today and we don't have a large panel of people, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have that are not kind of FDD related, since that's really Michael's role in our organization. But anything else you want to ask me about the industry, about it, more than happy to go through questions.
Okay. First of all, thank you for meeting with me today. I appreciate that. So Costa Oil it's a 10-minute oil change, right? And you have competitors like Strickland Brothers, who's well known, has a lot of locations. How do you overcome that challenge with your competitor? I mean, you have Strickland Oil, who's growing rapidly, and they're looking to have some of their franchise set up here in Phoenix too. and they're looking at someone so I know this from inside because I've spoken to them. They're looking to they have an investor who's looking for 10 locations here. So how do we overcome that as Costa Oil? You've right now, I think you have maybe 2 or 3 here in Arizona.
We have 3 separate franchisees that are slated to do, I think, 11 locations between the 3 of them. Our Mesa location was our very first franchise that opened, and it's a very successful franchise. I'm sure Michael has talked to you about doing a validation call with our franchisee there in Mesa, and they're already looking to start doing their second store. One of the nice things about the oil change business is that it's a geographically restricted business, and 85% of your customers come from within a 3-mile radius. So if you win your community, you can win your community. So brand recognition isn't the end all be all, other than for in the sense of franchising, branding is what gets people in the door. And as an emerging brand, whether it's Strickland or us, they really don't have brand equity at a national level to open up their doors and people know who they are. So then it comes down to what processes do you have in place and what kind of systems you have in place to get people in the door from day one on. The end goal is to have that brand recognition, which is what the Take Fives of the world are doing right now, because some of the legacy brands are starting to trail off, with the exception of probably Valvoline Instant Oil Change. But the store itself is only as good as the operator. And that's why Jiffy Lube, which is a franchise only model, they don't own any corporate stores. You have some franchises that are really, really good, and then you have some that have really terrible reputations. And so if you get into a market where you're dealing with good operators, then it's a little bit more of an uphill battle. But at the end of the day, Strickland is just another mousetrap. They don't do anything different. They're still hard upselling customers. They still have, high pressure tactics for their employees to hit goals. And so that creates a internal environment that makes it a little bit more difficult to retain employees. We've interviewed quite a few Strickland employees in some of the markets that we have stores that share markets with them, and so we know what their process is like. So we don't want to be just another version of that mousetrap. We want to be unique, which ironically enough means going back to the original model that scaled the industry in the first place. So there's really no one else, with the exception of maybe Take 5, that is doing the oil change only model. But even Take 5, again, they're, some of their compensation packages tied to, the sales of the store, which means you're going to get high pressure selling in order to hit numbers, in order to make, your salary. So for us, we don't want our employees looking over their shoulder, seeing if they're going to get fired because they didn't sell enough air filters. We don't want customers, white knuckle driving in, thinking that they're about to go to battle when all they want is an oil change to get in and get out. So as we grow, to answer your question more pointedly, the processes, the tactical side is what makes us successful. I would go look at our reviews at our Mesa store versus some of the surrounding stores. So they've only been open since April of 2022. And I think it really highlights what makes us different.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for that explanation. So you're saying with Costa Oil, there's not going to be where your employees have to hit a goal? Is that what I'm hearing?
We don't have commissions. We don't have sales goals. We don't put pressure on employees to sell a certain product in order to keep their job. And what long-term that does is creates an environment where when you go through, we're currently in a quote unquote labor crisis, and everyone's complaining about how they're having trouble finding workers. Well, if you treat the people you have right and don't put them in a position where they're fearing for their job, then it's much easier to retain employees than to hire new ones. And so while some of our competitors might cycle through employees and have to overstaff, we run 2-man teams in our stores to start. And then oftentimes as the car count grows, it goes to 3 and 4. But if you look at some of the competitors, at one point in time, and I need to find the franchise disclosure document, but at one point in time, Jiffy Lube required their franchisees to carry a minimum of 10 employees. And so if you've ever driven by one of those shops and you see a car in bay and you see 2 guys working on it and 3 guys standing around, that's mainly because they want to be overstaffed versus understaffed because they anticipate that high turnover.
Okay, well, how do you, I guess, how do you expect for revenues to be, to increase if you don't have a staff who is upselling to keep the business going? I mean, I guess I'm trying to figure out how you get
So
the
through the growth of car count, right? So there's the growth of car count, there's the ability to garner fleet accounts, and then through targeted secondary sales. So the quality of the sale is a lot more important than the quantity of the sale. If you go into one of the competitors and they see 30 cars in a day and they offer all 30 customers a secondary service, but only five of them buy something, whether they needed it or not, and then we have 30 cars, but we only offer 10 of them because they were high quality, targeted sales, and they were warm sales, not cold sales, then the conversion will be higher, and then that will translate to higher revenue. So just for example, right, we teach our guys to communicate with our customers in a way that is more human rather than robotic. The other competitors have moved to this kind of over indexing on technology after being criticized for not being technology savvy for so long, where now they have iPads and they go up to the window and they read off the odometer and they're like, okay, you need this, 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 and this. It's very robotic. What we want our guys to do, especially since for a lot of people who don't own their own home, their vehicle is the most expensive asset that they own. We need to be good stewards of their property. So when they come into this transaction, we talk to them about their car. Hey, you have electronic power steering. It doesn't take any power steering fluid, or this, and this. You take a peek inside the car, talk to them about, they see a car seat in the back. Oh, how old is your kid? You see a hockey bag in the back. Oh, you play hockey? I love hockey, whatever it is. And then you engage on that personal level. So then, when they pull the air filter and they show it to the customer and they say, hey, your air filter is good. And they come in the next time, they pull the air filter, they say, hey, probably another 5,000 miles. And then they come in the next time and you say, hey, I think it's time for you to change your air filter. That person thinks to themselves, well, they didn't try to sell it the last time and they didn't try to sell it the time before that, so I must actually need it. And then that cold sale turns into a warm sale, which means in the long tail, you have a higher conversion of those offers rather than throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks. And so really it's just about mitigating the ramp up period, getting to a higher car count, and then converting on those sales opportunities.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense. I'll tell you what I hear when I'm hearing what you're saying in regards to secondary sales, and mitigating the ramp up period, building relationship, being good stewards of our customers, right? I hear there's no incentive for the employee, so they're doing the upgrading and selling. So what's the incentive for them?
Well, the incentive for our employees is typically job security and not having to go into work worrying about their job. We are in an industry that there's a lot of turnover, and our turnover is much less than those in our space because we cater to what our employees' needs are. Especially when you don't have a lot of employees. I have 68 employees, and I could probably tell you one hobby of every employee that we have. And for example, back when we only had 4 stores, the manager of my Pittsburgh store was a big Pittsburgh Penguins fan. And rather than give him an impersonal Amazon gift card, I would just buy him and his wife tickets to the Penguins, which was actually less money. But what do you think is going to endear him more to me over the life of his career? The $40 Penguins tickets or $150 Amazon gift card. And that employee has been with me for 7 years, and I can go to bed at night knowing that store is going to be open on time and closed on time. And I'm not going to have to worry about shenanigans. And I know that he's going to run a clean shop. And I have several managers that have been with me for 6, 7 years including my very first employee from back in 2014. He's still with me at the Harrisburg store. And so you just have to find out what makes your employees tick. And sometimes it's money. And then, you know, you get them on board with what you're trying to do. And if they're solely money driven and they cannot get through that ramp up period, then they might not be a good fit. But when we talk to our employees about the opportunities of a growing company and, you know, what could be ahead if they see this through, and you give them ownership of their job and you don't micromanage them, for some people that is much more valuable than the extra couple dollars an hour.
That's true. It can, for some people, it can be that easy. Okay, so you're saying job security based on, you know, not micromanaging and finding what helps them tick. Now, how does one employee advance within Costa? If they're, you know, if they're wanting to do some type of advancement, I mean, there's only so many hats that you can wear.
Correct. So the typical transition is from, you know, doing top side to being able to do both sides of the car, top side, bottom side, to becoming a store manager. Some of the higher volume stores, we do have assistant managers. And then from store manager, you can become a territory manager. And then from territory manager, if there's a market that is big enough, there are opportunities, at least for us corporately. Obviously, within the franchise system, that's a lot different because you're not going to commingle employees with other stores. I mean, you can if you want to coordinate that with some of the other Phoenix and Mesa franchisees. And I would actually encourage, when we do have franchises open in a collective area, to create a co-op of some sort, because it really helps with the overall margins once you do that. But you know, one of our franchisees is becoming a franchise. One of our employees is becoming a franchisee, one of our territory managers. And that's, you know, we found out early on, that's what made him tick. That was what he wanted. His goal was to have his own shop. And like, for a lot of these guys, sometimes it's just finding out that the grass is not greener. Like, some of these guys are going to go on to do full service repairs because that's what they want. They're automotive minded. They want to work. They want to have their own shop, or they want to go work for a dealership. But for a lot of these guys, when you go from our world to the dealership, you get put into a bullpen and you get put into a rotation, and you end up doing only oil changes, brakes, and tires at the dealership to start anyway. And then what you find is, if they don't have a lot of business, then you have to wait for the other people in front of you to get their turn. And then you might end up making less money than just being $13 an hour for 45 hours a week. So we've had a number of guys go to the dealership, realize that's not what they want, and come back to us. But we've definitely had guys leave to go do full service repair because that's what their goal is. And they're a useful part of our process as well. Like, not everybody needs to be a lifelong employee. Especially in the summertime when volume picks up, it's important to have, you know, qualified hands to be able to help with the business.
Right. That, so I guess, you know, I'm just thinking, I'm sorry, I'm thinking, like, if we were to own or operate, I mean, obviously my husband would be the one who would be operating it and still be there consistently. Sorry, I'm just thinking in my head about like hours, like how that would work. If there's, you know, not too many employees, so if you have like 2 or 3 on staff. Okay. I mean, all this information is really good information. Now, how would you say you would tackle the challenges of electric cars rising, if that can be a factor in dampering revenues?
Yeah, so the electric car conversation, there's a bunch of different ways to go. In terms of what we are doing, is we believe that by being the oil change only option, as some of our competitors' car counts dwindle because they are trying to do things that are outside of their scope, we are going to be positioned well to get larger market share of a a smaller market share. So there's a couple things here. The do it for me market is outpacing the sale of electric vehicles. And what that means is the people who are entering the driving force that want their services done for them outpaces the sale of electric vehicles. So as it currently stands, our industry is in a state of growth, not decline. That will not always be the case. Eventually, and there's 350 million registered internal combustion engine vehicles on the road, or registered rather, not necessarily on the road. But even if that number splits in half, that's still a market share that is larger than a lot of other industries out there. And so our goal is not to dilute our brand by trying to wear too many hats. Our goal is to increase our car count by taking care of that service and having a larger number of customers versus relying on trying to do some of these things that are causing what I refer to as death by 1,000 cuts. There's a million different repair shops, and when you have no way to differentiate your brand, then you get into a race to the bottom on pricing, and nobody wins that. And so we are always going to be a premium service that sells people convenience. We sell people their time back. And so, if we can get that top of mind brand recognition by getting these franchise locations open and having a national presence, then we will be able to grow whether or not electric vehicles become 10%, 14%, 50%. Now, there's a lot of, I just talked about electric vehicles being, 50%. There's a lot of things that have to happen before that's even viable. And I'm sure since you went through the process with Strickland, they probably talked about the power grid and the availability of the minerals necessary to even electrify and do all the batteries. And then there's the battery recycling problem. The biggest one probably being infrastructure wise, there's just, there's not enough infrastructure unless we get more accepting of nuclear energy for the grid to be even capable of handling. If I think it's like 15% of cars on the road became electric. And so there's a lot of hurdles that have to happen first. And I think even some of the most pro electric vehicle proponents are giving a window of 25, 30 years before there's a meaningful change in the amount of electric vehicles on the road. So I don't really look at it from the perspective of how am I going to pivot to be able to service those vehicles. They're really not serviceable, right? So what Valvoline's doing is they're dressing up services they already do as electric vehicle services, like cabin air filters, wiper blades, coolant and things like that. That's not really electric vehicle services. Those are services they already do, but they're just dressing it up as a electric vehicle service package. And I think that's what a lot of our industry will do. I'd rather not get into that game of trying to pretend that we're being something we're not. I'd rather just be really good at fast oil changes where people know they're getting in and getting out, not being beat over the head. And I think we win on that premise.
All right, thank you for that explanation. I guess my last question here for you is, what is your vision for Costa Oil in the next 5 years? What do you vision? Where do you vision Costa being?
Yeah, so our biggest goal is getting the pipeline that we have, getting those stores built. We are under construction in several different sites. We have some pretty cool videos on our LinkedIn because we have a unique building that is made from SIPS panels, and it's a prefabricated building. So if you look at the timeline of our LinkedIn page, these buildings go up in less than 3 weeks once permitting and zoning is done. And so having that ability to put up buildings fast will be a competitive advantage for us. But really, once we get to a certain level of stores and we start turning on that national brand fund and really putting out the word that we are the oil change only store, which is a phrase that we trademarked. We've trademarked 2 phrases. We've trademarked America's favorite oil change, and we've trademarked the oil change only store because we are that committed to the premise that we are oil change only. We think that message will resonate as it has with the selling of franchises. We believe it will with the actual servicing of cars. And then, we just want to be the Chick-fil-A of oil changes where, people leave us having a good experience with the employees, I think our Google reviews show that, and we've done a good job of executing that, and our early franchisees have done a good job of executing that. And we will find ourselves having a really nice niche spot in the automotive repair world if we can execute on that.
I like that. I like that phrase. America's favorite oil change. That's a good one. Yeah, I guess that's all the questions I have, and I appreciate you answering all of them. I'll take this back to my husband and we'll take a look at everything here. And I really do like that phrase.
Well, Christina, of course, I was listening to everything here, and I can follow on some conversations and points that Costa made, probably on a different call, because I'm just a huge fan of this brand and what they do through my own experiences with other brands. And I've also learned about Take 5 and Strickland. And interestingly enough, on Sunday there was a book mentioned about, and there's so much talk about electric cars, but about cadmium, one of the major materials that goes into it. And there are some formidable challenges that I think the electric car industry faces on many levels. But this actually takes you right into exploiting the child labor and many other things that go into the environmental issues that go into pulling cadmium and other materials out of the ground. But anyway, one other thing I wanted to mention is, there is a manager. Costa has a manager that he mentioned him earlier that's going to become a franchisee. Maybe that's something that would be interesting for you to do, is just to have a call with Daryl and, get a sense of how he feels about Costa and why he is, doing what he's doing. He can probably share with you, how they've grown the business. One of the questions that you asked earlier. And in advance of that, you could always look at his reviews. I think that will also give you a sense of, what makes the business different and why he's been able to create such a success, with the stores that he's involved in. So anyway, but thank you. I know we're coming up against the bottom of the hour here. Costa, thank you for doing this. And Christina, maybe, at some point you'll be able to meet the team in Costa at the Discovery Day. We offer that, I think I mentioned on the last call, virtually or in person. So
Right. Okay. Yeah, and that's probably something I'll go over with my husband. We'll talk about it, and I'm sure we'll do. If anything, we'll probably do the virtual.
Okay.
The virtual meeting or Discovery Day. But yeah, no, I appreciate that input, that information. And you said Daryl, he's the manager that's looking to become.
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
And he's here. Is he here in Mesa?
No, he's actually he's in Youngstown in Ohio.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, but we can arrange a call. I can arrange a call for you if you like.
Okay. Yeah, that would be great.
All right.
That'd be great.
Super.
All right. Thank you, guys. Have a great week.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, Christina,
Bye-bye.
for making the
All
call.
right. Bye-bye.